Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight on another Tenant Thursdays video. Before we go forward on to today's segment, I do want to add that last week we did have our annual fall benefit, Bringing Justice Home. So if you missed it, I will be posting the link shortly so that you can go ahead and watch that. We gave out a couple of good awards, so stay tuned for that comment. Today's a very important segment. Last week, we had a couple of updates come out for the COVID-19 Eviction Moratorium for Illinois, so that's what we'll be discussing today. I do want to say that if you have any immediate concerns that are not related to the eviction moratorium, to please go to rentervention.com or give us a call at 312-347-7600. I will also be posting that into the comment section of this video so that you don't have to run and write everything down. It's going to be right there in front and center and pinned in the comment section. Kind of moving on forward, my name is Alex Escobedo, and I am the Communication and Events Coordinator here at Lawyers Committee for Better Housing. We have two very important guests with me today. We have Katie Pinter, who's a Prairie State staff attorney at Prairie State Legal Services, and Morgan Schumann, who's a staff attorney at LCBH and also a manager at Rentervention. Thank you both for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Alex, for having
us. So kind of diving right in, let's go ahead and talk about the COVID-19 eviction moratorium. What updates or changes were made, and what was what's the date that has been extended to, Morgan?
Sure. Yeah, so the governor has, as you're probably familiar by now, since the COVID began, has basically been extending eviction moratoriums 30 days at a time. And the process for the eviction moratorium and who is protected has really drastically changed with this latest extension. And if my memory serves me right, I think it came into effect on the 14th of November and is effective for 30 days. So we're not sure yet, what's going to happen after the middle of December, but that's kind of the time frame on it. I do want to just briefly share my screen, and I can kind of walk you through a little bit about what has changed. And the biggest thing is that in order to be protected by the governor's moratorium, it no longer protects almost all tenants generally. It instead requires you to provide your landlord with a specific declaration that says that you are a covered tenant under the eviction moratorium if you're going to be protected from your landlord filing an eviction case against you. And so the contents of that declaration, if you want to stay within the protection of the governor's moratorium, you have to swear basically under penalty of perjury that you have been financially impacted by COVID, that you have not been able to remain current on your rent, that you are currently attempting to make partial payments to the extent that you can, given other necessary expenses, and also that you fit within certain income qualifications, which is generally $99,000 in earnings for someone who's single and $198,000 for a couple. So those are the general contents of the declaration. But if you are a tenant maybe that was impacted by COVID, but this does not apply to you, then there is a chance that your landlord could end up filing an eviction case against you. There is, I'll add, still protection from enforcement of most eviction cases. So even if your landlord is able to file a case in court and potentially go to court and get an eviction order, for the most part, except in very narrow circumstances, the sheriff is not going to actually be coming out to enforce those eviction orders. And that does continue to remain across the board between the new and the old. So, jump a couple slides. This will kind of show the old process where you can see in the graph on the right, everything that's in green were tenants that would have been protected under the old moratorium. So all evictions, this might include somebody if they were living in an apartment and their lease expired, but they continued to stay in the apartment, maybe because they didn't want to go look for another place or something like that. Landlords would not have been able to file an eviction case. These people might be current on their rent. That was under the old system, but under the new system, if they're current on the rent, they might not be able to give that same kind of declaration that we were just talking about because maybe they didn't fall behind on the rent at all. This could also include landlords that wanted to just terminate a month-to-month agreement. This would have included all non-payment evictions. So even if it wasn't non-payment because of a COVID-related issue, but if it was non-payment for something else, that would have been included under the old moratorium. And then of course covering tenants that were not able to pay their rent because of a COVID-related issue. The main exception in the old moratorium was for health and safety issues. So if you as a tenant were like creating a health or safety risk to other tenants in the building or causing significant damage to property or something like that, there was a narrow exception that a landlord could have potentially filed an eviction case in those circumstances under the old moratorium. But then under the new moratorium, it looks a lot more like this. And so just like on the last slide, anything in the red tone is going to be something that the landlord could actually file an eviction case now. And so that includes, situations where there's non-payment that is not related to COVID, and even COVID-related non-payment if the tenant doesn't bring forward that specific declaration that we were talking about. So that's where it's really important for you to know whether or not you can be protected by that declaration, and if you are, to make the determination as to whether you want to provide that to your landlord.
And thank you for all that valuable information. And just to make it clear, I want to ask this question just so that it's specifically addressed. But what if under the old moratorium, we told tenants to talk to their landlord and let them know that they were struggling or they were infected by COVID? What do they have to re-sign that declaration, or is it okay if the landlord already knows that a tenant has been affected by COVID-19?
Well, I think you brought up a good point as far as declarations go. The previous state moratoriums did not require a declaration, but it's a good reminder for individuals, for tenants, that if they'd signed a previous declaration, it was the CDC declaration, and the CDC moratorium is still in existence. And that is specifically important for people who have experienced income loss that was not necessarily COVID related, which is a specific requirement for the state declaration. So I guess I would say to the tenant who had already signed a CDC declaration with their landlord, I think they are covered under the CDC. I don't think they need to confuse the matter by signing an additional Illinois declaration. If they met the requirements for the CDC declaration, they should be covered until the 31st of December.
And can I add just one thing to that? If you're a City of Chicago tenant, you might have heard about the Chicago Eviction Protection Ordinance that included a notice that you could give to your landlord that you were impacted by COVID. If you signed that notice, that's different from the CDC notice that Katie was just talking about. So just so that you're aware that these are two different types of notices. The one, the City of Chicago one, and you might have even gotten this from Rentervention, is not signed under penalty of perjury. And it also doesn't include all four of the different aspects that we were talking about: the income qualifications, the impact from COVID, and the like. And so if all you did was to communicate with your landlord that you were impacted by COVID, either by sending them a Chicago notice or informally just by like texting them or sending an email that says that you were impacted by COVID, that's different, and you will want to send another one. So I just want to make sure that there's a distinction between that CDC declaration, and I definitely agree with Katie that that is, it's basically very, very similar to the state one, and that those can be interchangeable. At least you can use the CDC one for the purpose of being protected by the governor's statewide eviction moratorium.
Got it. And I do want to add that if you're watching at home and you have any questions regarding the new updates to the eviction moratorium for Illinois, go ahead and post them into the comments section of the video or the live stream, whether it's now or next week. I will be checking them and asking the questions to these attorneys on the stream or offline if you do it tomorrow or over the weekend. And so thanks for bringing up that point, Morgan. So where would a tenant get a hold of that declaration if they haven't signed one under penalty of perjury?
Sure. So you've got a couple options. Statewide, you can go to the Illinois Housing Development Authority, which is IHDA, IHDA. On their website, they'll have a link to the moratorium. Anyone in Illinois can also get a copy of this directly from rentervention.com. So if you go on there and chat with Rennie, you'll be able to walk through the steps to determine if you could be protected by it and get a copy of it that you can either print out and sign, or you can have a copy sent to you through HelloSign, which is our e-signature. So you can put an electronic signature on there and then send it to your landlord that way. Katie, I don't know, does Prairie State also have a way that tenants could get the declaration from you?
Well, I do know that tenants in counties outside Cook can utilize the Rentervention app and get the state declaration. I know I work out of Lake County. Both the CDC declaration and the IDHA declaration are already on their website. And the usual suspects, as you said, IDHA, Illinois Legal Advocate have copies available that individuals can just put in the information and generate it. And I think that covers non-Cook area. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is your landlord actually, before they give you a termination notice, is supposed to be giving you a copy of this declaration. So in theory, you should be able to wait for your landlord to give it to you. But, and Alex, maybe you'll ask about this later, you know, if you don't get it from the landlord, then that's something that you can certainly go look for it yourself and give it to your landlord kind of on your own.
Yeah, and I will be posting links to these websites, both the IDA one, the Rentervention, in a couple of minutes. We also have a Rentervention kind of worksheet, fact sheet about this eviction moratorium. I can't post it in the comment section now because it's a picture and Facebook has some weird thing with that, but I can after. So if you come back maybe later today after the live stream, I will be posting it into the comment section so you don't have to go digging around, and that will contain all the information that we're talking about in this video today. But yes, Morgan, that was my next question, and I want to specifically ask this to Katie as well. Is it the different in areas outside of Cook as to what they need to do if the landlord doesn't give a tenant the declaration before giving them notice or starting the proceedings for an eviction filing?
I mean, I think the advice or best practice would probably be the same. We would advise the tenant, if it was just advice, not representation, we would advise them to obtain a copy of the declaration and sign it and give it to the landlord anyway, and be prepared to show that at court. I can't read judges' minds. I would hope that they would determine that if they're signing the declaration, they're alleging these things, they should be covered and they should dismiss the suit. But that's why we're lawyers. Litigation started before us, litigation will be there after us. So hopefully, though, that would be the case, that the eviction would be dismissed.
Mm-hmm. And something Katie raises is a really important point, that you need to be able to show a court that you did deliver this notice. So you want to think about how it is that you're getting it to your landlord in a way that you would be able to prove to a judge if you had to.
Got it. And so this is something that I think came to mind because the declaration does basically state that tenant knows that they're behind on rent. Are there any downsides to filling this out or filling the declaration out that can maybe possibly be used against the tenant in the future, or just downsides in general?
I would suggest for any tenant, whether they're signing, I don't know what the specifics are for the Cook County notice, but for the CDC declaration, for the state declaration, that you really go through to see, do you meet these qualifications? Have you made best efforts? And I would also, as a tenant, plan to show some sort of budget. So if they can meet those qualifications, if they are willing to pay what they can out of a budget, then yes, they should sign it. We do know some tenants, they're looking at different options, and one of them might be to save money, not sign, to move out to the next place. So tenants should think really carefully about what they want to do, what their next step is, and really read through and consider all the portions of the declaration. The declaration does discuss discretionary expenses, and I think there might be a little bit more scrutiny from judges about that. And I would say a big concern that we're just thinking of with some of our clients is we're coming into the holidays, and unfortunately, holiday meals, festive meals, or holiday giving is not really going to be considered a discretionary expense. So I think individuals or tenants really need to make some decisions before moving forward. And I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to be honest about that.
And Morgan, is it, would you say it's the same case for tenants in the Cook County area or in Chicago?
Yes, this is the same statewide. This is a statewide eviction protection, and the declaration that you would have to sign to be protected by the governor's moratorium is the same whether you're in Chicago, Cook County generally, or anywhere in the state. And it is important that you think thoughtfully about whether you can honestly sign this declaration, because it is made under penalty of perjury. So it would be a crime to be signing this declaration if in good faith you can't say that it agrees, that it applies to you.
Thank you. And I do want to take a moment. If you're just joining us on Tenant Thursdays or on today's segment, we are talking about the updates to the eviction moratorium for Illinois that just came out very recently. And if you're a Spanish speaker, I will be translating this into Spanish for subtitles. So I can't make the language and audio into Spanish, but there will be captions in Spanish so that you can understand this as well, since we have been putting communications out in Spanish regarding the updates. And I'll say that in Spanish in case you're watching. Pero si hablan en español, yo haré subtítulos en español para este video. No puedo cambiar el audio ni traducir eso, pero los subtítulos puedo poner. Y los estaré haciendo sobre el fin de semana, si demoran un poco. So para la siguiente semana ya voy a tener subtítulos y todos los recursos sobre el nuevo moratorio que está saliendo de COVID-19. And I do want to extend it. If you're watching and you have any questions regarding the eviction moratorium, please go ahead and put them in the comment section. We can ask them to the attorneys on the call today. If you're watching post live stream, still go ahead and comment. I can always forward that question after and get you some answers and resources. It looks like those were all my questions. We answered all of them without having me to ask those questions. So I do want to say thank you for joining our call today and giving this very important update. I know it was a little sudden, but I think it's really important that we get this information out for everyone, since it's not just Cook, but it's also Illinois across the board.
Please consider sharing this video if you know anybody, friends or family that you think could benefit from seeing this, or even friends of friends. Please consider sharing. And I also know and can share with you that Uptown People's Law Center here in Chicago is also working on putting together a video that can be shared via social media that explains a lot of what we were just going through. And I expect that that's going to be completed today. So LCBH and Rentervention at least will be posting a copy of that, and you can feel free to share that widely as well, so that we get the message out to as many tenants as possible. Because as you can see, this is only going to protect tenants that take that affirmative step of actually sending this declaration into the landlord. And so we need to make sure that tenants are really aware of their rights.
Definitely. Yeah. And as Morgan mentioned, we will be sharing that. I will also be sharing social media contacts for Prairie State Legal Services. So in case you're not in Cook County, they were on the call today. Katie was on the call today, and you can go to them as well. If you're outside the Chicago area, the Cook County area, you can always go to rentervention.com. Those links are already on the comment section. So it looks like no questions are coming in. So I do want to say thank you, Morgan and Katie, for answering our questions and giving us this update on the eviction moratorium. if you're watching post live stream or over the weekend or over Thanksgiving break, please go ahead and comment any questions, message LCH's Facebook page or Intervention's Facebook page, and we can definitely answer any questions you may have. If it's an immediate concern, please go directly to intervention.com or give us a call at 312-347-7600. With that said, I do want to say before we leave that next week we will not have a Tenant Thursdays again because it's Thanksgiving, but we will be back in December on December 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, for another Tenant Thursdays. So with that, thank you so much. Have a good weekend, good Thanksgiving holiday, and we'll see everyone back on December 3rd.